Welcome back, adventurers, to Jordan Quest through Neverwinter. So I decided to make a short video on the recent announcement of the release of Neverwinter from open beta into the official launch. So now, they've put out a huge list of patch notes that they will be having to go along with this release, and it's basically given us everything, or near everything, that people have been asking for over the last 6 weeks of open beta. And most of them I'm actually really happy about. I decided I'd go over the major points, at least the ones that I thought were major. Going over the entire thing will take quite a long time. I will put a link to the document with the patch notes in the description of this video down below, but I think I'm mostly going to be focusing on the large changes to the game, to the structure, as well as the big changes made to the tanking aspect of the Guardian Fighter, as well as the healing and threat generation of the Cleric, or the Devoted Cleric. So, start out with every class. Nearly everything of every class, every feat, power, has been adjusted a little bit. So I'm assuming they're going to have to give out respecs to everybody. They haven't quite said exactly what they're going to do yet, whether it's going to be a forced respec, or whether you're going to get a free token, or something along that lines. But everyone got changed. So everyone's going to have to spend a little bit of time when they log onto their class for the first time after June 20th, and fix everything. And I would strongly suggest reading the notes to see where you think you want to put your points, because it does cost money to respec your characters. So if you just respec your character blind and you don't know what the new powers, the new stats on the new powers do, or the new feats, then you could end up not being where you want to be and then having to spend money to fix it. So yes, please look ahead. The big things though, Guardian Fighter got a huge increase in tanking ability between threat mitigation, damage mitigation, and threat generation. They have been given basically an all-around buff so that they can actually do their jobs in dungeons. The biggest problem with the tanks, you could do okay in questing or in little instances, but in the big dungeons, especially against the bosses, the Cleric did the tanking. He ran around with all the mobs around him because his heals were generating more threat than they should have. Basically, running down with the healing threat generation, basically it came down to something like this. Every monster or every creature that you were fighting would get an equal copy of the threat from every heal. So let's just say, and I'm going to pull numbers out of my butt here, that a 5,000 point heal generated 5,000 points of aggro. That means every monster, every creature that you were fighting got that 5,000 points of Cleric aggro. So now they've changed it so that the aggro is divided between each creature there. So if you have 5 creatures that you're fighting and you generate that 5,000 points of aggro, each creature will get 1,000 points of aggro, which is a lot more manageable for the tank, or the Guardian Fighter in this case, to out aggro. They only have to aggro 1,000 points per creature rather than 5,000 points per creature. So that allows the tank to do its job a lot better. In general, the Guardian Fighter's general abilities got 35% higher threat generation. Their guard absorbs 10% more damage. Their at-wills are scaled to level better. They just in general improved the tank's ability to both mitigate the damage and generate the threat. But along with that, they did change a couple of Cleric abilities that, mainly like the Astral Shield. So you couldn't double stack Astral Shield and basically take no damage from anyone ever. They made it so you can only take one instance of the Astral Shield, and they reduced the cooldown, or they increased the cooldown rather, on Astral Shield, so you could not have it permanent either. But other things that they've changed outside the classes are the queue system for queuing up for a dungeon or skirmish. The classes now are balanced a bit better as far as getting the right, make sure you have a cleric and a tank and a DPS, and trying to get it to be one of every class so that everyone can get a chance to roll on the loot that they need. As well as, if you get a drop, if someone drops from a group, previously, I'm not playing very well here when I'm trying to talk here, the game would just pick anyone at all to fill that slot. So if you ended up losing your cleric, it might give you a rogue instead. And even if you already had a rogue, or even 2 rogues, I've been in groups where I ended up having 3 control wizards picked from the queue table. So it wasn't exactly working correctly beforehand. But now, with this new improvement, they say that it will work much better. The auction house also received some improvements. The text is a little bit clearer on some items, especially those with long names. Big thing is the search function is made a lot better. You can now finally search by level. So you can actually sort out all those level 1 through 59 items when you're just looking for a level 60 item. PvP did change. Apparently a lot of improvements on through PvP, although they did reduce the amount of reward you got for losing, so I guess play better. But I'm not really a big PvPer, so I really can't go into very much of the details of the PvP improvements because I don't know what it was like beforehand. Companions like my wolf over there, have been improved greatly. The damage scale is now based on, or their stat scale, I guess, is now based on level rather than just solely based on their rank. So beforehand, if you had a common pet, they could only get to rank 15. And that basically meant they stopped leveling. They never improved from that point further unless you gave them better items. So it made it so that having a common pet at level 60 was near useless, because they would just get splatted by any monster that came along in moments. So now that it has been improved, they now scale a little bit higher. Though still having a rare or very rare pet is an improvement upon the common pet. At least they're not completely useless. Looting. So looting now, whenever you loot an item in a group, you now cannot, at least by default, cannot roll need on anything that is not a class item, or is a non-class item. So it either has to be open to anyone or of your class for you to be able to roll need on it. So I've heard some people saying that this is not always a good case. I personally couldn't really think of a time when I couldn't get around. If I wanted to have an item for my rogue and I was playing my guardian fighter, I could, just ask the person who did win it for the item. And if you're running in a good group, which I'm assuming you're not running in a pug when you want to do this, they would give it to you if they didn't need it themselves. And if they did need it for their character, then your side class just doesn't get it. Or your alt class, I guess, your other class that you wanted to roll on. So yeah, I don't see very much of a problem with this. I like it quite a lot, but I have heard some people say they had some complaints, but oh well. Moving along, the gateway tool, which is a great idea, but did have a number of quirks with it, has been improved. I've not gotten to play around with the new gateway. It has not been released at this time with the improvements listed, but they said that they had fixed a number of graphical issues where you would try to click on something and it wouldn't work. I know I was trying to use it on my tablet, on my smartphone, or even in a browser tab, and a lot of times I could not click on a certain power or certain task, or the font would look all weird and all the text would be all scrunched up. So that's all been hopefully improved. User interface, mainly from what I could tell, the user interface improvements mainly came about through alternate clients. Like if you had the German version of Neverwinter, or if you had the French version of Neverwinter, some of the text and user interface objects, I guess. Yes, user interface objects would be not lining up correctly. So they did a lot of improvements on that in this new update. Now another big thing, quests, dungeons, and rewards. So yes, there is a number of dungeons, particularly, that were infuriating because they were so difficult. It was mainly the last boss of the dungeons, particularly the dragons, as well as what's that guy? The woman at the end of Grey Wolf Den. She and the dragons were particularly really difficult. They had too many ads, had too many AoEs, and the AoEs were deadly. So they reduced the hit points of the dragons, they reduced the amount of ads of certain fights, they reduced the effectiveness of some of the AoEs. Now this is only for the normal dungeons. These are only for the dungeons while you're leveling up. If you're playing the epic level dungeons, then expect punishment. So they did not make the changes to lessen the pain on the epic dungeons. And then finally, they actually did a number of game performance increases. So they're mainly concentrating on improving the performance in Protector's Enclave, so you didn't have nearly as much rubber banding or lag or just drops in frame rates, as well as many other areas of the game. But I think the biggest effect was in Protector's Enclave, where there were so many people, and it just wasn't very fun to move around on peak times in those areas. So I think that basically does the wrap up of all of the major things. They did have a couple other things listed. They changed up the tutorial section a little bit. They changed the voice of the first guy you run into in the tutorial section. Haven't done that myself yet, so I'm kind of curious on what they did to him. Maybe I'll make a new character right after this and then and see what they did. But again, please take a look at the notes, especially in regards to your class, so that you can see what to expect as far as what to do with your respec once we get it. But until then, I think it's time to camp and tune in next time on Jordan Quests through Neverwinter. Have a good day.